Hello and welcome to the A&P. I am Alex Johansson and my co-host Patrick McCallum. Patrick,
Hello, everyone. How are you getting on?
we're having logical discussions about the state of the world. Let's get into it, brother. Hey, Patrick, what's going on, bud?
Not too bad at all, buddy. How are you getting on?
Doing great. Welcome to the A&P. Patrick McCallum and Alex Johansson. We're going to be talking about a debate on the floor of the Oxford Union. This House believes Israel is an apartheid state responsible for genocide. February the 8th. This is Mr. Jonathan Sacerdoti. He is a UK intellectual and journalist, so we're going to get into this, Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah, very soft-spoken, but a really smart dude. Here we go.
Yep.
Tonight we are here to confront lies that masquerade as truth and accusations which are intended actually to inflame rather than to inform. This is a debate which twists the language of justice into a weapon of hate. These claims don't only defame Israel, but they actually insult the memory of true victims of the heinous crimes of genocide and apartheid. And this motion has a reckless disregard for history, law, and truth. These allegations aren't critiques of policies, they're assaults, and above all else, they're an appeal to prejudice rather than reason.
So, just
Very well spoken.
right,
Very well spoken.
Just the debate topic itself is errant, right? So the word genocide was created in the 40s to describe what happened to the Roma and the Jews in Europe. You remember Germany in the 40s, early 40s, right?
Yes.
That whole situation with the camps and the problems and the issues and all those things, right? So somehow this House wanted to present this as the debate topic, right? So Israel was itself the victim that caused the word genocide to be created in the first place. And an apartheid state is something that they had in South Africa. So what he's saying is the words are wrong and they're created to cause distress for no good reason other than to cause that distress.
What word do you think they should use in this particular debate?
It should have been something about Israel's policies. So if I say Ireland has a policy, or Sweden has a policy, or Pakistan has a policy, I can discuss the merits and the shortcomings of that policy. But this isn't a policy thing. This is, I have an opinion, and the opinion is not well informed, and we're going to talk about an ill-formed opinion as opposed to the policies put in place to attempt to overcome issues in that society or that state.
So you should say their label should have been Israel's policy in Gaza from this state to this state.
Right.
I think that should be the...
Right.
Okay.
And all the other actors who are involved in that, especially Egypt. Egypt is heavily involved in this. Egypt has a big role to play in this. There was a treaty that they signed that said they were going to perform certain tasks and actions if there were civilian issues, casualties, problems, infrastructure, whatever, in the Gaza Strip, and they have not meted out their responsibilities. So Israel is doing... Go ahead.
But you have to remember too, Egypt is not in a good position financially or otherwise to probably meet that obligation. It probably was made in good faith, but unfortunately Egypt has had its own issues in the last couple of decades since that really has been drawn up.
So was it really then made in good faith, do you believe?
Well, it was probably at the time, but unfortunately, as you know, Egypt has gone through a lot of upheaval since.
Right. Well, and situations change. I understand that situations change, but if you realize you can't meet out your responsibilities, then you should reach out to an entity that can help you.
They have reached out. They have actually reached out to other international bodies.
Okay,
Egypt.
I have not seen that. I would certainly love
They have
to see
they
that.
have. In fairness, a lot of aid agencies have been helping Egypt for nearly well past 10 years at this stage.
Right, and then we have
So
UNRWA.
they're already in place there. So, but unfortunately, it's such a massive issue that Egypt is way past their capabilities of.
Well, it feels like a
meeting the
problem
responsibility.
that people don't want to solve because the conflict and those issues have a goal of their own, right? So let's get back to Mr. Sacerdoti.
They assume that you will believe them because you have been primed by previous slurs against the state of Israel. But I am here tonight to appeal to your sense of reason. I hope that you are better than that you are smarter than that, and that you are more open to hearing different views than that. We will dismantle those falsehoods and expose the hypocrisy and malice of those who wield them. But first, I must begin by addressing the very organization and nature of this debate. The title itself is an outrage, and the speakers are possibly the most aggressive people who the president could have invited. Debate is meant to be a form of discussion that will help people understand one another's point of view. You're right. Debate is designed to enlighten, but this one isn't. It's designed to antagonize for your entertainment. But I'm not here to entertain you. This isn't my first encounter with this sort of vitriol in this chamber. When I was a student here some 23 years ago, the president then invited the infamous Holocaust denier David Irving to come and speak. The invitation was eventually rescinded after an uproar, but not before I experienced overt and explicit anti-Semitism in the form of jeers and laughter like that in this very room, more or less where that gentleman over there is sitting. Today's president invited a man who justifies the atrocities of October the 7th. Unfortunately, he was too scared to be here tonight, and that's like
I really do think that, yeah, I really do think that the event that took place on October 7th was revolting in all ways.
Yes.
Unacceptable behavior, just absolutely unacceptable behavior. There is another avenue that could have been taken, not the one that was taken in its horrific, violent nature, against a people for being who they are, right?
And how do you feel about Israel's response since?
I think they're backed into a corner. There's not much that they can do except attempt to defend themselves as best they can. And their civilian to combatant death ratio is literally the best that it is that in any conflict that has ever occurred, right? So to say they're being genocidal against civilians, well, part of that is because Hamas is putting their civilians in front of their combatants. And then Hamas is taking off their combative clothes and putting on civilian attire and counting those deaths as civilian deaths, right? And when you put all of your eggs underneath baskets such as hospitals and churches and mosques and those kinds of things, then those things will get targeted because that's where the combatants are.
Yes.
Right? But Israel is dropping leaflets and giving phone calls, and then all the avenues that the civilians have to exit areas, because the IDF has said, look, this is the passage to a safe place because we're going to be performing military operations in this space. Hamas is killing them on their way to safety, and then attributing those deaths to the IDF, and well, obviously then Israel by extension, right?
And has this been verified by the United Nations?
Yes.
Observers while they're there?
Yep.
Okay.
It has been confirmed. Here we go.
Path will be here tomorrow instead, unchallenged by debate. We are left instead with someone who called for normalizing massacres as the status quo.
So there was a female voice in the audience that just said shame. So this is a form of saying I'm offended by the thing you're saying, and the word I'm going to use is shame because you hold an opinion. I'm saying it is shameful that you hold that opinion. as opposed to saying, point of order, I believe XYZ thing you said is incorrect. Here's the evidentiary value backing it up, creating a syllogistic argument that is airtight. So, right?
Yes, but that's not going to happen. Not going to happen in this particular debate, I don't think.
Well, right, because that person is going to scream and yell and make
Yes.
visceral, emotional arguments that are unfounded in the first place, which is exactly what he's saying, right?
Yes,
He's like,
I think us in the West seem to forget something very important. This particular conflict is going back thousands of years in its history.
For sure.
And it seems to be only now that the West seems to take great interest in it.
Right. Well, the League of Nations, before it was the UN, before the UN became a chartered organization, made so many errors in judgment after World War I and then again after World War II. They just put a bunch of lines in the sand, literally in this case, and said, you people get this, you people get that. Didn't take into account the Kurds. Didn't take into account the Jewish people. Didn't take into account the Druze. Jordan. Like none of them.
What did they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I studied quite a lot after the effects after World War II, and the lines, as you said, the lines in the sand that were drawn at the time were made, I would say, Western ignorance of the history around the world, or the naive history of their lack of understanding is probably the best way I'm saying it. The lack of understanding of history in a lot of these regions.
I believe Ireland and the UK have had a bit of a tussle in the past as well. So sometimes not well received. I think that at the time they were probably acting in good faith, but also in what was politically expedient. They had just gotten out of a world war. They were really not wanting to deal with those issues, and there were internal problems in the UK and all over the world.
It wasn't, as I said, they had other problems around. The British Empire at the time had its own problems around the world, not just in Ireland, but other movements around the world.
Well, other kettles in the fire, if you will, huh?
That's pretty much. And everyone kind of knew after World War I, even especially after World War II, is the fact that Ireland realized, and that the emperor had no clothes. So we weren't the only freedom movement at the time.
Right. All right, let's get back to Mr. Sacerdoti.
Someone who called Vladimir Zelensky a Nazi promoting Zionist and called to wipe off the state of Israel from the map, and somebody who called Jews sleazy thieves. Clearly, people interested in conflict resolution and peaceful coexistence. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you.
I was said there. I didn't quite catch what was being said to that young man.
Oh, he said no, thank you. So what was happening on the floor is somebody was calling for a point of order, and the speaker in certain instances in this debate can say no, super respectful, no, thank you. No, thank you. I need to finish what I'm saying. No, thank you.
Yeah. But
they said something wildly emotional, and there were a bunch of cheers in the audience, right? Because it feeds into what they have been told to think, not how to critically think through the process, right? So you hit the emotional button, everybody cheers. It was just like when Yosef, it was 3 episodes ago? Not Yosef, Mossab Hassan Yosef got angry. They were just screaming like unintelligible, emotionally driven things, and he was like, "No, stop, no." This gentleman's a little more calm in his demeanor, but his message is no less important.
Information cannot be made unless the speaker accepts it.
Shame. So here I am again in this very room, once more confronted by plenty of hatred directed at Jews. These accusations are grotesque. They're not honest criticisms, and they are indeed aimed at the Jewish state. Claims of apartheid and genocide twist history's darkest crimes and use them as weapons against Israel. The accusers themselves are actually guilty of the crimes they allege Israel is committing. I have three exceptional colleagues with me tonight who will help me in making this case. Two Arabs with personal experience and biography which will debunk these false allegations of apartheid and genocide, and a legal expert who speaks with international law authority. As for me, I am a proud Jew. My late father was a Holocaust survivor. He was hidden by Catholic clergy in Italy from a regime that sought to deport him for extermination simply because of his race and religion. That is genocide.
He's correct. That is genocide. That is not what is happening in Israel. That is not what is happening in the Gaza Strip. Like those are not the things that are happening, right? So it's a mislabel, which again makes the House's proposition errant in nature, right? And that's why he's saying it is so grotesque.
Okay, but do you think, as you said, there's no saints or sinners on when it comes to conflict of any sort? There's no saints or sinners on either side most of the time.
Correct. And while I understand that, when you start a conflict and then you realize, oops, I'm going to lose, you don't get to say, I don't want to be in this fight anymore. Like, that's not how that works. And then waylaying Israel with accusations that are errant in nature doesn't make them correct because you give them emotional fuel, right?
Yes.
That is apartheid, and it bears no resemblance to the lies being peddled against Israel tonight. So let's begin with some definitions, which Mr. Al-Kurd declined to give. We need to look at the 1948 Genocide Convention and the 1973 Apartheid Convention. These will give us legal definitions, but remember, they're not interested in law. They're interested in big slurs to do big damage.
So by defining these words, what he's doing is he's giving everybody the same kit bag, I guess you'd call it, or the same tools to use, right? When you and I have a discussion, and I don't know a word you've used, either because it's Gaelic or it's not used that way in my country, I'm like, hey, Patrick, and you're like, what's going on there, Alex? I'm like, hey, fella, I don't understand that word. It doesn't feel like it was used correctly. You're like, oh.
Yes, language doesn't matter, and I understand his point that he's making. Language definitely does matter.
Right, it does. And if you're using the wrong word, then you can't create an appropriately syllogistic argument, right? You can't have true and correct conclusions, or at least conclusions that are functional or helpful, right? A functional, helpful conclusion will help you more understand your opponent's position, right? But if you pervert the word and say this word means this here, but later I'm going to change its meaning, or just right from the front use it incorrectly to give it all that emotional fuel, then you're going to be unable to come up with true, correct, and especially in this instance, helpful conclusions to help people think through processes, right?
Yes. Do you think there, as you said, this whole debate could have used different words? Is that what
No, it's not that. It's just one side is defining the language differently. If you remember, Mr. Musab Hassan Yosef said, who would raise their hand in this audience if they knew that that attack was coming? Would they say something? Only 5% of that group raised their hands, right?
And that shows you the audience that's already primed.
Well, no,
you can see it even. You can even see it behind. You can even see it behind this young man here.
Right. The conclusion has already been reached.
You can see the. You can see the two ladies that are already. Are standing right behind him. Are sitting right behind him.
Right, and they're covering their body in a protective way. There's a lot going on there. Like, they literally just can't believe that somebody would have a differing opinion, and that individual is somehow just grotesque himself for holding the opinion.
Yes,
right? They're not willing.
They're so brainwashed by their beliefs, you could say.
I believe that's the case. They believe a thing to be true. I don't know that it's a complete belief structure, but I think it's a worldview problem, right? Their worldview is somehow cankerous in nature, and they can't accept that other people's opinions might have merit, right? As opposed to steel manning the argument and saying, okay, here's what you're saying. I'm going to give it the most support I can. Okay, now I understand your position. Do you agree that this is your position? I say yes, and then you say, well, my opinion differs from yours because X, Y, Z. And I can say, oh, okay, well, here's why I find that errant in nature. And then we go back and forth until we come to good, like true and correct and helpful conclusions to help us move forward as people.
But I think, unfortunately, with this particular audience, that is never going to happen. And not judging a book by its cover, as they say long ago. But I think they have one worldview, most of this audience, and it's not a good one in a lot of ways.
Not one that's safe for the world in general in the future. I don't think so.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Here we go.
Genocide requires acts intended to destroy in whole or in part a racial, ethnic, national, or religious group. Apartheid entails inhuman acts committed with the intent of establishing and maintaining domination by one racial group over another. Legally, both these crimes hinge on intent.
Intent. That's super important, right? So now he's given those definitions. Those are what those terms mean by that 1948 convention and that 1973 convention, right? So we've established that that's what those things mean, and they're hinged on intent. So functionally, in an international court, you would have to prove that was their intent, because that is the crime. The crime is the intent to commit the thing in that way, right?
There has been Israeli politicians who have openly been interviewed and have said that they would want to cleanse the entire Gaza Strip. I know they're members of the right wing, right? Extreme
right.
Extreme right in Israel. But there has been many members of the Israeli parliament who have actually said that they do want to cleanse this problem in the Gaza Strip.
Right, cleanse the problem, but not the people. They don't want to kill the people.
Yes, but we all know exactly what they mean by cleanse. We kind of well, let's put it this way. They've said other things as well. That let's put it this way. If I repeat it, would definitely get us demonetized.
But the thing is year after year, the two-state solution, all these other kinds of solutions as preferred are not accepted. So when one side says, I literally will not accept any of your offers based on how I feel about you as a people, that makes it very difficult to parlay with that group of people.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Well nigh impossible. Hey, here's a great solution. We don't want it. Here's another great solution. We don't want it. Here's a solution where we're giving you way more than we're getting. We don't want that. So if they don't want it, then eventually you will end up with conflict. Like there isn't a choice, right?
Yeah.
Specific, documented, unmistakable intent. This is not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of law. There is no policy of racial discrimination, no intent to destroy. You will find no documentation of Israeli meetings at government level planning any such thing. The Nazis at their Wannsee conference planned what they called the final solution to the Jewish question. But you will find no Israeli equivalent. You know what you will find? Look in the New York Times. You'll find the minutes of 10 meetings. You will find in the New York Times the minutes of 10 meetings from Hamas and their Iranian backers and Hezbollah, planning what they called the big plan. That is, the genocidal attack that took place on the 7th of October, 2023.
So this is one team doing something and then blaming the other team for doing the thing that they're doing, right?
Yes.
So the minutes from these meetings are published, and their big plan was functionally, hey, let's destroy the state of Israel, right?
Yes.
And the thing about that is there are Arab Jews. There are Arab Jews that serve in their governance, in their judicial system, in their military. They are not second-class citizens in Israel. They're not. But because those Arabs work in some fashion for their country, then Hamas, again with their backers, decided that it would be the grandest of ideas to destroy them. And let's keep on with this, because I'll get emotional here. So,
in Rwanda in 1994, radio broadcasts directed civilians to murder their neighbors with machetes. 800,000 people were killed in 100 days. During the Holocaust, my family were subject to racial laws which discriminated against them, deported people for extermination. In Gaza, Israel has no such aim, no such plan, no such action. Instead, Israel does go to extraordinary lengths to try to avoid civilian deaths. It cancels airstrikes when there is a risk of excessive civilian deaths. There are plenty of documented instances. It issues warnings before airstrikes. Hamas, on the other hand, does hide its weapons, its control centers in schools, in mosques, in universities, in hospitals.
Order. The speaker will be heard in silence.
Israel has provided 700,000 tons of food to Gaza during this war. That is a daily average. That is a daily average of.
somebody said that that was lies, except that is specifically the truth. Over 3,000 calories of food goes into every resident of the Gaza Strip. The problem is that Hamas is in charge, and the food and the aid doesn't get to those people who are supposed to get them.
No, that, well, has been toggled, turned on and off. I understand what he's saying, but my own government have also UN inspectors over there, and Israel has turned the food on and off
based
at particular times.
Right, but based on military requirements. They need to go into a place. You can't send a food truck in front of the tank. If you have to go.
No, they have been turning it on and off. So from Israel's point of view, they want civilians to move out of certain areas so they can go in and carry on military operations. It's, as I said, there's no saints or sinners on either side of this conflict.
Right, and I understand that Israel's doing the best it can with a bad hand, right?
Yes.
So if I send in 100,000 tons of aid, right? Or we'll say 1,000 tons on a day, right? So I sent the aid in. The expectation is whoever the governmental group is there will then appropriately distribute that. If I give you enough food and aid for a week, I'm not throttling it on and off. I've given you enough food for a week.
Yes, but no, what they're doing is closing. Israel does close down borders crossings for aid on a regular basis.
Right,
we've all seen it.
But then we also right,
it's
and I
not,
understand that.
Yeah.
But then we also have to talk about the hard line that Egypt has, and they're not sending anything in at all. Nothing is coming from the south, from Egypt, as far as aid. It is all.
Yeah, those border crossings have been closed down. Yes.
Right. So if the expectation is that Israel,
not from the border, by the way, not from the Egyptian side.
Right.
The Egyptian side hasn't closed their borders. It's from the other side. It's closed.
It's closed on the Egypt side as well. They don't want They don't want the Palestinians to come into.
No, they don't want the Palestinians coming over, but they have said, in fairness to Egypt, they have said they will allow aid trucks through. But it has been closed. The borders have been closed on the other side.
Right.
Not by the way.
Right.
By the way, not by Israel. By the way, not by the Israeli government. Let's make this very clear.
Okay.
It's from Hamas' side this time.
Right. Hamas shut it down. Yeah.
Yes. So there's no, as I was saying, there's no saints or sinners on either side of this conflict. At either side.
And at the end of the day, it's the civilians who reside in Gaza.
Exactly. That's who suffers at the end of the day with this conflict at the moment. It is the normal civilians.
Yeah, your average everyday Palestinian in Gaza, for sure.
Yeah.
Of 3,200 calories per person. The NHS in this country.
Order! Order! The speaker is entitled to be heard in silence and to be.
No, they're cursing. It's different.
The courtesy of
They're cursing. That's different.
Yes.
They need to get out.
If she doesn't get out, if she doesn't get out,
Anyone who cares.
Please have a seat. You may not address the chair unless you make one.
Wow.
Order. 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 Order.
But that was the two ladies I was pointing out earlier, wasn't it?
I'm not
Is that the two
sure.
ladies?
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the two ladies I was pointing out earlier. Kept jeering when he was speaking.
Right. The ones that
Right
were
behind him.
screaming.
Yeah, they're obviously,
"Yay."
look, let's say that if people want to see the video, they can see they're obviously devout Muslims who are jeering him.
I'm not sure.
You can
if
see
they're
by
devout
the, you can
Muslims,
see, you can see by their dress code. Yeah, you can see by their dress code. We all, you know what I mean? We all know it.
Well, I don't know. I think one of them was wearing a hijab, right?
Yes, they're both wearing formal hijabs, yes.
Okay.
Speaker will be heard. Can we maintain order? Could I ask the member? Could I ask the member to have a seat? Could I ask the speakers not to respond? Could I ask?
I've seen debates in the Oxford Union over the years,
Right.
and this is probably one of the more divisive ones I've seen.
That's
I think it's the first time it's the first time I've seen physical security being brought in like this.
Well,
in the Oxford Union.
It's a fiery topic, and
Yes.
it doesn't seem like both sides want to engage in good faith, and
No,
that
they
is an
don't.
issue.
Yeah.
Mr. Haddad, could you please not object to the member?
No, get out. I'm not saying no. No. Get out. Get out. That's it.
Okay.
Get out.
So Alex, do we kind of skip over this little hoo-ha as they say, and we get back to the debate as the
For sure. Yeah. We'll run through it when he gets back to talking, but we'll let it play and then we'll chop out the whole section. It's fine.
Abusing the forms of the House.
It's okay. I don't want you to like me. Yalla barra. 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 Barra.
Order.
Serious supporting.
Order.
Serious supporting.
Order. The speaker will be heard. The House will come to order. The member will be taken care of in the welfare room. I will remind the member that there be no recording. Could I have order, please? The speaker will continue. Jonathan, please finish your speech.
I might just say that I understand there are plenty of people in this room who don't agree with us, who don't like us. But this esteemed establishment is meant to be a bastion of free speech, discussion, and debate. And this example is not any of those things. And I urge all of you, I'm here to tell you my side of an argument. I also attended this university. I was a student here, and I understand that part of the experience of being a student is to be challenged by thoughts and facts and information that you may not agree with or you may not like. But to shout like that, to abuse a speaker who is being respectful and giving you their side of an argument is not the way to achieve better knowledge or understanding of anything. I will give all of the proposition speakers their dues.
We were talking about that earlier. There's a certain kind of respect that you have to have in the room if you're going to do this kind of thing. And quelling free speech does not seem like the way to get it done.
No, but they seem to be just shouting down, as you say, using emotion to get their argument across.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of foul language, swear words, epithets. It spices up language a little bit.
Yes, you are.
but that is not the place for it. That is certainly not the place for it.
There's a time and place to come across. There's a time and place to use that, and this particular institution is not a time or a place.
Yeah.
As he says, this is about free speech on both sides.
Right. Let me say my thing, then you get to say your thing, then we can decide between us what is the most true, correct, and helpful conclusion that we can come to, and that would be advantageous for all.
Yes, but unfortunately, with such a topic, it's nigh on impossible to have a discussion like this.
Yep. All right, here we go.
Israel has provided 700,000 tons of food to the people of Gaza, which is 3,200 calories per Gazan citizen per day on average. And that is, whether you like it or not, above the NHS recommended amounts for men in this country. Gazans are receiving more food per day than the world average during the war. Madam, if you have a point of information, stand up and make it. Stand up and make it.
On a point of order, you may not speak unless the speaker recognizes you. Please let the speaker finish.
I'm letting her speak. What would you like to say, madam? I'm not.
Well,
The thing is, just because you say so doesn't mean it's true.
That's one of those. Because you believe the thing to be true, it doesn't make it so.
No, he gave her the opportunity to stand up and make her point and prove it. Prove her point.
She had zero evidentiary value, which she had was emotional vitriol, and that's not going to achieve the goal.
The reason there are people who are going without food in Gaza is because Hamas stole the food. No, thank you. The UN said that 90 trucks were hijacked last week, and even the BBC reported it. No, thank you. Israel has vaccinated 97% of the Gazan population against polio during this war. You did not catch the Nazis doing that. No. Just because you dislike losing an unnecessary war you started does not make something genocide. The apartheid claim, no thank you. The apartheid claim similarly collapses under scrutiny. Arab citizens in Israel vote, hold office, and serve as judges. Arab judge Salim Jubran sent a Jewish former prime minister to jail. That is not an apartheid. The Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel enshrines equality.
So that young
One
man
has to
said
decide in relation to disputed territories.
Go ahead, Patrick.
What that young man particularly said, I don't know if people caught it, is the reason why they call it apartheid, this young man was saying from the audience, is the fact that Israel is oppressing Palestinian rights. But it's, as you say, it falls down as when the entire argument, as you say, is all based on feelings over facts.
That's correct.
And when you see a young man, obviously well-educated young man from an audience, believing that, obviously a well-to-do young man, if he is going to university in Oxford, he wouldn't be. If you're going to university in Oxford, he wouldn't be short of a few bob, as they say.
Right.
It's interesting to see these young men and women believing that only one side has all the answers, instead of looking into, like, it only took me a couple of hours on Google to get most of the facts that I've used today. These young men and women have got some of the best education Britain has to offer, and they still leave emotional arguments over logical arguments.
Right. The thought process is errant in nature because the information is out there for them to access. They have chosen not to. They've chosen
it's right there. As I say, it's right there in Google. Now,
Well,
when you do go onto Google, it will show you very straightforwardly that neither side are saints or sinners. But both sides are not saints. It is a war. People have to understand when a war happens, mistakes are made on both sides. Israel tries to limit their mistakes. They have, they have tried, but it is a war. People on the West have to understand that it is a war. A war going on a lot longer than most of our countries have existed.
Well, I think that they're unaware that in war there are mistakes and there are bad things that happen. But it's one state going past, we're going to talk about it and negotiate it, to you have done a thing where I have to respond in such a way. And Israel is really doing their best to reduce those civilian casualties. They really are. And
they are trying their best, but we all understand why Israel is doing it. We all understand the entire state of Israel suffered a massive loss in October.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that their fire is up. As I say, we're both old enough to remember when another nation got savagely attacked September 11th.
Yes.
And when that country collectively got its fire up, a lot of casualties happen all over the world.
Yes.
And this is similarly what's happening with Israel. When a nation gets attacked, a lot of reason goes out the window on both sides, by the way. But we are all old enough to remember September 11th and what happened at the aftermath of the decade afterwards, when the US got savagely attacked.
Mm-hmm.
They obviously they're saying the same talking points as Israel at the moment, but we all understand that Israel is attacked. Israel now is doing a full military offensive to deal with the Gaza Strip. We all understand that. And unfortunately, there is going to be civilian casualties, no matter how careful anyone is. When a bomb is dropped, we all know that there is going to be casualties.
Yep.
Now, Israel is, as I said, they are trying, and the capabilities they have to limit civilian casualties. But
they are trying to mitigate them for sure.
They are trying, but they say it is a war. It's a war that Hamas is losing. We all know that.
Right, and they're so far above the standard of, in quotes, what is acceptable. It's insane. The conflict before this one that showed a serious reduction in civilian casualties was in Mosul, when the United States went into Mosul, and Ireland. Israel's doing a lot better than even the Americans did in Mosul. So we got to push this on.
Whether you apply the law of Israel or different laws to that area. And under the laws of occupation, different laws are frequently applied to a different area. So should you consider it occupied territory, it is bound not to have the same laws. And indeed, with areas A, B, and C in Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, whichever you prefer to call it, there are differences in how people are governed because there was an agreement between Israel and the Palestinian Authority to try to cede some level of autonomy to the Palestinians. We have seen in Gaza, which is the closest we get to a self-governing Palestinian state, with no Israelis in it, with no Jews in it, with no Jewish corpses in it. They exhumed them when they evacuated, just what the Palestinians used that autonomous area for. It was to attack the Jewish state. Quiet.
Order. Please do not make fun of information unless it's gets you away.
There is only one Middle Eastern country where Jews and Arabs in great number coexist. It's called Israel. Indeed, it was the attempted moderation and normalization of other Arab states that caused the Palestinians to invade Israel to try to scupper the prospect of a Middle East which could have Jews living peacefully inside it, which other Arab states were pleased to try to embrace.
The timing of the October 7th thing was fishy in that Israel was going to be getting into some serious negotiations with Saudi Arabia. So I'm pretty sure that's what he's referring to.
Yes, they were actually negotiating a deal at the time. Yes, I do remember that. It was all over the news.
The society that was built in Gaza reflects the tragic choices that the people and leadership there made. Like all genocidal regimes throughout time, they educated their children for hatred, fostering a culture where ordinary people could be complicit in atrocities against their near neighbors.
That's the UNRWA influence in their schools. This is what he's talking about right there.
Yeah.
Which is what we saw on October the 7th. Like the Rwandan teacher who bludgeoned children to death by grabbing them from the feet and slamming them against the wall, I watched a Gazan civilian in sandals on his own video footage from his phone trying to decapitate a Thai worker in an Israeli kibbutz using a hoe. This is attempted genocide.
Point of information.
So it's attempted genocide because it specifically fits the legal definition of what genocide is. That individual was attacked by another individual because they're a citizen of Israel, right? Because of the statehold that they claim and because they're Jewish. Not, that's, yeah.
Well, in this, there was a lot of, during October, there was a lot of, not just Jewish civilians murdered, but there was also a lot of workers who were over there, as he said, he pointed out Thailand, there was a lot of Filipino workers and so on. There was a lot of, even our own citizens were over there.
Yes, because they were working with the Jews.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Is your argument that Israel, while murdering and taking control of Gazan Palestinian civilians, is not committing genocide or apartheid because it simply didn't mean to?
It is a perfectly valid question. Israel is not murdering, by the way. Under the laws of genocide, under the legal definitions in the Genocide Convention, it isn't possible to accidentally commit a genocide. Genocide, as I said, genocide requires intent. What you will find if you study genocides is that in all agreed documented historical genocides, the society has visions of a utopic future where the other who is attacked is somehow seen as dirty and inferior, and there is a coordinated plan to try to eliminate them and get rid of them. Collateral damage in a war, however ugly, is not the same thing. No.
So the claim was there that there was collateral damage in the form of one individual specifically attacking another, and that's not how that works. Again, like he said, with the legal definition, what was committed was in fact genocide, but it was not from Israel toward Hamas. It was from Hamas towards Israel.
Yeah.
I will try to make time because I have taken points and there have been a lot of interruptions, and I would like to finish. I appreciate your patience. I simply want to say that all of this genocidal act that took place on October the 7th is the result of a choice for hatred and a choice for apartheid among Palestinians. You will not find Palestinian-controlled territory where Jews are allowed to live. That is apartheid.
Again, that's the legal definition.
Yes.
They are not allowed in the space. That is therefore an apartheid space. And it's not in Israel where that's happening. Go ahead.
But they don't. But they did. The Palestinians in the past in the Gaza Strip have allowed Israelis into their country, give them aid and medicine and so on, and then tell them to leave afterwards. That's pretty much what he's saying.
Right. You can bring us stuff, but only if you leave it, and then you yourself leave. In 2005, Israel completely removed themselves, right? Now, there's also another thing there. Israel cannot occupy the Gaza Strip. Does that make sense? Legally, they cannot occupy the Gaza Strip because that is considered their land as viewed by the United Nations, right? So you can't occupy territory that's your territory, right? We talked about it before. So Russia is occupying the Donbass and it's occupying Crimea because that land is Ukrainian land, right? So if Ukraine takes that back over, they wouldn't be occupying it. They would be taking back territory that is theirs.
Their land.
Right. And it's the same thing with the West Bank. The West Bank is Israel's per the charter. Like that's their land. Whatever they do with it by giving the Palestinian Authority self-governance, and the same with Gaza, giving them self-governance, it's still Israel's, right? So Israel cannot occupy Gaza by the legal definition, right?
But what do you think the end goal will be in Gaza? What do you think will happen eventually?
That area is so tumultuous. And the conflict's been going on for so long. I don't know. I don't even know what right looks like there. Like that is
there's no peace. There's going to be no peaceful situation there, no matter what way we dress this one up.
No, I think there's a way to achieve a peaceful situation, but I think the cure would be far worse than the wound, right?
Yes.
Bad things would have to happen for that to be appropriately cleaned up. So here we go.
And this hatred is deeply rooted in a culture which instills from childhood hatred. While Israeli children are taught in schools of a fantasy time when they won't need to serve in the army, or a time, I'm going to finish my entire speech, when there will be a time when they do not need to enter the army, when they will live, in coexistence with their Arab neighbors. It is not the case in Palestinian-controlled lands. I have held in my own hands the UNRWA UN textbooks, which teach Palestinians maths with if I have 5 Jews and I kill 3, how many are left?
Sit down. Be quiet. Be quiet.
It is my job to get the House to order, not the Speaker's job to get the House to order. A point of information should not be made unless the Speaker accepts.
I interviewed a woman who had survived the massacre in Kibbutz Nachal Oz. She told me how her husband had run the agricultural work there and employed dozens of Gazan Palestinians who entered Israel every day and earned 5 times what they could in Gaza, helping them to support their families.
I don't think that young man understands how apartheid works.
Yeah, that's what he said. Sounds like apartheid.
Yes, that sounds like apartheid. Bring a guy over the border. I give him work. I pay him well. He goes home. That's how apartheid works.
No,
we should know. Well, I come from Ireland, and trust me, we know what apartheid and occupation looks like. We have a very long history of it.
Well, here in the UK, I've had a bit of a tussle here and there about, from what I understand, William the Orange and all that. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah, well, even during the early 1900s, when we were fighting our own war of independence.
Right.
So yeah, we understand how apartheid looks like, and we understand what slave wages look like.
Right, for sure. I think that's our episode 2, the Oireachtas and all that. Yep.
Yes.
Here we go.
She said to me, nobody needs to teach us about coexistence because we've been living it for years. After the genocidal attack of October the 7th, she said, we can never do that again. The acts that were carried out by Palestinians on that day set back the cause of coexistence. The hatred that drove those attacks was not motivated by territory or politics. It was religiously based. The attackers themselves told me that. They proudly streamed videos while they were attacking. Watch the videos. I did. I'll quote, Allahu Akbar. Even if 1,000 of us die for Islam, even if 2,000 die for Islam, the time of the jihad nation has arrived. They weren't calling for peace or coexistence. They weren't calling for two states. They were calling for jihad, a holy war aimed at the Jews. No. That is apartheid, that is genocide, and that was not Israeli.
Yeah, per the legal definitions.
Yes.
Right? That's specifically what that was.
I remember watching the news reports at the time.
Well, I watched
myself. I think we all did all over the world.
I watched, I don't know, 30 or 40 hours of all those videos. One of them was one of the Palestinians come across and took someone's phone and called one of their relatives and said, "Look, this is the phone of the Jew that I killed." Like that.
Yes.
That is so beyond disgusting. But he was proud of it, right? Like,
yes,
he had pride that he had done a thing and then taken the phone from the Jew and then made the. I mean, oh my God! Like, oh.
Yeah, we've all seen we all saw the atrocities live on air.
Yeah, so
all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, to close, I'm hoping that in this audience there are some people with open minds. And I'd like you to think critically. It's easy to live in the feedback loop of what you already think you know and believe. It's easy to repeat what you've been told again and again and allow it to reinforce prejudices. But truth often lies outside those loops, in the uncomfortable and necessary area of challenging things you think you know.
That's echo chambers. And I think all the algorithms that we have across platforms, we're really just getting fed the things that we already believe over and over and over again.
That's how social media and the news works in general. Well, especially more so as social media. We all understand that you research one thing, you get led down, you fall down the rabbit hole, as they said.
Right. You scroll for 4 hours because it's all stuff that appeals to you. And you're like, what did I do with those 4 hours? But I think it's more insidious than that because we have access to some of the best information ever. Everybody, well, not everybody, but almost everybody in a G7 country or Ireland or Scandinavia, United States, Mexico, Canada, whatever, you have a computer in your pocket that will answer any question that you have. But if the people providing those answers have a goal that isn't to keep you well informed, but to give you information you'll find the most palatable, down that road lies downfall. I mean, and
unfortunately, a lot of social media outlets, and even the news agencies themselves, are guilty of they're chasing the bottom line.
Clicks and money.
Yes, clicks and money.
So, and I think that's why we see a lot of outrageous things, right? Things that are absolutely outrageous. You're like, oh, that's crazy. For instance, I don't know if you remember BLM, right? So in one year in the United States, there was X amount of people who were killed by other kinds of people. And when asked, somebody thought it was 12,000. It was 9. 9 people were wrongfully murdered by one group to the other, wrongfully, right?
As you say, I think it's the echo chambers of a lot of, not just the social media, but there's a lot of Reddit groups. We can name out dozens of different platforms that are guilty of it.
Right.
That they provide a platform for a lot of these echo groups.
Well, I think the thing that bothers me is that I think that I am fairly well informed, but in knowing many things, I learned that I don't know as many things as I thought. I fill in a lot of what I think to be right may not be as well researched as it could, but it's a healthy exchange, you and I, that's like, I think this thing, and you're like, well, there's nuance to it. There's saints, there's sinners, and we don't have really 100% black and white on what that is, right?
No. And that's the important idea behind any debate is everyone comes from their own different point of view, including these Oxford debates. I've watched numerous of them over the years, not just this particular debate. it is it's very important to always look at both sides of any argument, rightly or wrongly.
Oh,
Just
for
have
sure.
a full understanding.
Right. Well,
That's how we study history all the way. That you have to look at the motivations of both sides in history. If you're ever studying history, you always look at both sides.
You can learn from the past so we don't commit those acts in the future.
And unfortunately, I think these young people in this institution, I think they haven't looked at the history of the world.
Right.
Not just
and on top
their
of
own.
On top of that, they have not had hardship. There's been no hardship. They've always had, inside plumbing, and they haven't had to go hunt for their food. They hunt to the grocery store, right? Because that's where the food is, right? There hasn't. It's created a soft bunch, to be honest, right?
But also a very, very easily led bunch, as you can see by this audience and how they're reacting. These are all Western educated Muslims.
Well, not all of them. There's a good group of them in there.
Yes,
so,
we can all pretty much read between the lines, and it's just their constant jeering and lack of
engagement on the concept, right? And again, like Mr. Sacerdoti said, the debate itself, like what they're debating, is errant in nature, right? So you would have to establish first that Israel is an apartheid state and is committing genocide. So this house believes a thing isn't the policy of Israel is this, right? So it is so errant just in its construction, right?
Yes.
Again, like he said, made to inflame.
Yes. And I think that's why this debate happened. It was just to inflame the arguments on both sides. And I wouldn't say I'm not surprised at the Docs of Union, but I am surprised in one way that they allowed a debate like this to happen with such little oversight.
Right.
When I say oversight, I'm talking about having proper rules in place, having proper security in place. Like, members of the audience shouldn't have to get up and escort another member of the audience out, which we've seen there.
Yeah,
they're
ill-behaved. Yeah. They're ill-behaved. It's like they're like petulant children. If you've been to the store with your children and your child throws a fit on the floor because they're not getting their way, right? Like, this is just college kids doing the same thing.
They're doing the same thing. And I understand when they're young and they're in college, they're full of ideas. But when you're in college and you're studying, well, you should study all points of view of an argument. When I was in college, we did a fantastic module called communications. Every college student when I was in college had to do it, no matter what you're studying. So communications was about having debates like this, communicating each other's ideas, so on. There's all different little modules, but I found it was a great way of getting you to think outside the box on communication skills. And I think maybe Oxford University could do with one or two of these modules, maybe.
It might be a good idea to make our children more human. All right, let's close this thing down. We got just a couple of minutes left. Not even that.
Yes.
So tonight I ask you to dig deeper. And I don't want to reduce this debate to slurs and slanders. True discussion and collaboration are only possible among people of goodwill, those who genuinely seek peace and coexistence. And that's why I think we have to reject the people who weaponize these words of justice in order to inflame and divide. Israel's story is not one of apartheid and genocide. It is one of survival against relentless hostility. To see this clearly is to stand for truth and justice and the possibility of peace.
Well, very well. Very, very.
He's very well spoken.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes. Very, very good young man.
Well, and I like his call to let's let his last few seconds of this thing play.
Oh, that's it.
There it is. I just had to watch that dude sit down. So when you call for people to act rationally, it's like when you're angry and someone tells you to calm down. You're like, I am calm. It's that kind of thing. And I think those students were presented with concepts they didn't like, and as opposed to saying, oh, that's uncomfortable, they decided to like show their spleen. Like, I'm going to show you my ass because I'm unhappy. Like, what are you doing?
Yes. Yeah.
Just tell me what's wrong.
But
man.
a lot of young men and women, well, all college students are like that. I'll be honest. They're full of ideas and they're always exploring the world, trying to find themselves, as they say. And it's interesting to see that a lot of these Western educated young men and women are falling into a lot of these ideals.
Well, I think I had an advantage when I went to college because I already had performed some years in active military. So I'd been around the world a little bit, and I'd seen this and that and the other thing. And so I had a little bit more of a grounding. But some of these kids come from their parents' house, and they've been there, and then they show up to this place where there's all these weird, crazy ideas, and it's hard to get your grounding. And so you're right; they can be easily.
I would say myself as a mature student when I went to college myself, and as they say, a couple of years around the world, and a couple of more grey hairs that we have. When
oh my goodness!
I always remember one time I was man in one of these little boots in, you probably have them society days, as we call them. All these little clubs come together and they try to get new members.
Yes, we had that. We did have that.
I was manning one of the boots for young men. They had to go get lunch. I said, look, I'll stand in for you. All I was doing was handing out leaflets, what was going on in the college. They're part of the student union. I said, look, we'll have to get lunch. I'll man it. All I'm doing is handing out leaflets.
Yeah,
so
I did student government too, so yeah, I get it.
I was site officer in one of those particular societies. So I said, I'll step in and help you out. I said, I can have my lunch later on. So there was right next to me, there was this booth. And it was for the Communist Party of Ireland.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I was standing right next to these young men and women. Don't get me wrong, really, really nice kids. But I said, oh, all right. I said, what does your parents work at? So they're doctors and lawyers. I said, oh, okay. So communism is all about eating the rich, isn't it? Oh, yes, we share everything equally. Does that mean I can take your parents' houses? They looked at me, what? I said, yeah, you have to share. That's the idea. I'll just go over to your parents' house tomorrow morning and just throw them out and take it. They're rich. Can I take their house? And I started going down that road. And it was interesting to see that when these young men and women were showing the consequences of their beliefs.
Right.
It was like something sparked within them.
Super eye-opening experience, right?
Yes.
And I think in our lives, we have those people in our lives that give us this bit of an epiphany about how things might work if we reductio ad absurdum and we apply the rules that we've put up as our worldview and they just don't work, right?
It was like when I was up in one of our cities in Ireland there a couple of months back. Went up. We're all going out for a bite to eat and a couple of drinks. One or two quiet pints. So we walked right. It was on a Saturday. We walked right into the middle of a pro-Palestinian protest.
Oh, there you go.
And they were shouting the usual. We were just sitting outside the pub, just having pints.
Talking about rivers and seas. Got it.
Yes, they were doing the usual. And a couple of guys I knew from my university days asked me. They're part of the LGBT community. So I called over to them. I said, what are you doing? Oh, they started doing the usual talking. I said, you should go over to Palestine sometime and just wave your rainbow flag and see how you are received.
Well, they would be received very well. They'd get flying lessons.
Oh, yes. Yes. And they looked at me, oh, that's not the point. That's not what we're protesting. And I was kind of going, really? You're going to stand with a government who, as you say, will give you free flying lessons. And they looked at me and they just walked away. And I was kind of going, The guys with me said, you might have been going over talking to the stool because he said they're just so sold on the rhetoric.
They are.
They don't understand how much of a hypocrites they actually are.
Yep. Well, it feeds their need to feel good and virtuous. It's virtue signaling
Yes.
at its
Oh, yeah.
base.
Virtue signaling at its best.
Sir. So, all right. Hey, like and subscribe to the A&P. We are the A&P gents. We are Alex Johansson and Patrick McCallum. It has been a pleasure to see you all again. Hopefully we see you again in the next one. Be good. Patrick, you got anything for us?
No, that's it. Good luck, and thank you all very much.
We are